We stood on a thin rock ledge in tight rubber shoes, looking up, searching for our friends somewhere overhead. They were beyond our line of sight, most likely feeling the sunlight striking their faces, wishing they'd brought more water. Carrie and I had been standing on this ledge for an hour now. Let's take a step back. Where did this all start? Who are we? Our crew includes my dad, Trevor, Carrie, and me. The first part of this journey was to backpack 7 miles with ridiculously heavy backpacks full of rock climbing gear to get to our campsite. On that trek, we could see our challenge calling to us off in the distance. And that night I tried to sleep but couldn't relax, knowing what we'd be doing tomorrow. The following morning we had to get up early and hike a treacherous, neglected trail to get to the base of the climb. The snake dike route now stood in front of us, with all its magnificent twisting rock ladders. In the time it took us to get set up and moving, we ran into 2 groups, a couple and a group of 3 friends. We were going to be traditional climbing, and we're a group of 4, so that meant we were going to be going slower than either of these groups. We let the couple go before since they arrived shortly after us, but our leader, my father, had already gone set up and moving when the 3 friends showed up. After my father went my friend Trevor, then Carrie, and then I laced up my climbing shoes and jumped on the rock myself.
There they are!
That's when Carrie and I got stuck on the top of the first pitch. We had a full hour to contemplate what could have gone wrong. We eventually found out from Trevor and my dad that the group of 3 friends, whom my dad later referred to as the Yahoos, had been greater thrill seekers than we anticipated. While we took the mapped out and well-known route, they had simul-climbed up the rock just to the right of us so that they could cut in front of us and continue up the main route. Simul-climbing, also called simultaneous climbing, is normally when 2 people are climbing at the same time while still using bolts and protection. This method is a lot faster, but also a lot riskier because if a lower climber falls, they will drag the lead climber off and down the rock face. The 3 Yahoos simul-climbed all at once and ignored most, if not all, good ideas. Some of the Yahoos' climbing ability would have been impressive if it hadn't been overshadowed by their selfish impatience. Once the Yahoos had successfully cut us off and sprinted up the wall out of our line of sight, Carrie and I finally resumed climbing. It felt good to be moving again, until I inevitably looked behind me. The small tree marking the base of the climb kept moving further and further away, reminding me of how far I would fall. And I don't tend to think of myself as someone who's afraid of heights, but I do have a natural and healthy fear of falling off of cliffs. Meanwhile, my friend Carrie has a different phobia, being struck by lightning. And there were storm clouds off in the distance, which was enough to incite unease. In general, there seemed to be a thick cloud of fear surrounding us, but we tried to push those thoughts out of our minds and press onward. Thunder. The dull sense of unease had elevated to full-on panic. Carrie frantically tried to yell to our overhead crew that we needed to start rappelling back to the ground. I knew in my mind that wasn't really an option. We were already halfway up the climb, and my dad would press on. When I met up with Carrie at the next pitch, I tried to instill his hope back into our climb. In retrospect, the talk I gave him helped me just as much as it did him, since I myself wasn't feeling too confident we would survive. One thing I told him was that when we got to the top of this climb, we would look back at this memory and feel awesome, or we'd have a great story to tell. We felt shaky, but we kept moving. Once we finished the main climb, we still had an hour-long hike up a curved surface to get to the summit. And that hour seemed like eternity.
What is this incline? What the hell?
Our ankles were screaming as we dragged them along. However, my friends and I weren't going to make this a boring ordeal. We had packed our Hawaiian shirts in our bags for this very moment. We proudly marched to the scenic vista in our vibrant palm tree-covered attire, with rope bags and climbing shoes swinging from our backs. After a full 8 hours on the rock, we had climbed Half Dome.
Woohoo!
We were then granted a brief moment of fame as tourists who took the cables up questioned our sanity and admired our crazy ambition. Some were even kind enough to throw us some water and excess snacks, although climbing a literal mountain wasn't enough of a workout for some of us. Look at that!
For sure.
Burnout number 9!
I try to get up from the...
Standing at the edge of Half Dome in our floral attire as the sun set, we felt a rare and joyous sense of accomplishment. We had pushed through what we thought we were capable of, and conquered both our fears and a mountain. After all that, we decided we had earned a day off. although it was interrupted by rain, so we had to put our Boy Scout knowledge to use. Our mighty hammock ladder conquers all weather and all terrain. However, even after climbing a literal mountain, I still couldn't gracefully climb into the top hammock.